All right, boys, we are ready, and we want to welcome everyone to another special episode of Believe in the Houston Texans, and we have a special guest with us here today. Mr. Solomon Wilcotts played in the NFL, is on TV, is in sports media. You see him everywhere. He does a fantastic job, award-winning color analyst. Mr. Wilcotts, thank you for joining us today.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Okay. Now, I have a question for you. You've been around the NFL for pretty much a long time. Have you ever seen a rookie quarterback like C.J. Stroud?
Look, this is one that I really have to stretch and strain to really think about someone with a combination. Cam Newton was certainly one that really just came onto the scene and shocked everyone with the way that he played. He was such a physical presence on the field. But the way that C.J. Stroud is slinging it, the way he's throwing it, he can make all the throws, but yet he still has great movement, tremendous pocket presence, great ball placement, tremendous poise in the pocket, and a keen understanding of where to go with the ball. He doesn't take a lot of sacks, but more importantly, he set a record for the number of pass attempts as a rookie to start a career without throwing an interception. And as this recording right now, 14 touchdowns to 1 interception. That's a 14-to-1 ratio. So no, we've never seen anything like this.
The national media talking heads right now are starting to gauge the question of whether or not C.J. Stroud is a top 10 quarterback. We've heard Richard Sherman on Undisputed with Skip Bayless say, yes, he is a top 10 quarterback. What are your thoughts on him entering that conversation? Is he or is he not a top 10 quarterback?
He's performing like. All the metrics suggest that his performance right now, is right in that area. I would really hesitate to say, okay, he's just flat out top 10 quarterback because there's still a lot to prove. There's still a lot of big games that need to be won. I thought last Sunday, week 9 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a really good defense, played against a lot of guys that won a Super Bowl, right? And to have that come from behind win and to put up those kind of numbers, but not at garbage time. But in a meaningful way, to come from behind and have a game-winning drive, to have 3 players over 110 yards receiving in that game, I think he's starting to check all the boxes that would answer yes to that question.
And just to follow up from Harvey's, what do you think about this Houston Texans team? I mean, last year at this point, the season was already over. There was so much talks about this being a dysfunctional franchise, but the hiring of DeMeco Ryans, the drafting of C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson Jr., it looks like the Houston Texans are on the way up. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I don't think you can leave offense coordinator Bobby Slowick off that list. I think you have to understand this is 49ers type of offense. The tempo, the rhythm, the ball distribution, multiple players, not just relying on one talented receiver, but multiples, their ability to create yards after the catch. A lot of those things has made this thing take off, right? Or at least gain some altitude much faster than we thought. And we know that a good offense protects a defense. I don't think that anyone can look at the performance last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where you give up 30-plus points on defense and say, oh, that's great. That's great defense. I think we overlook it a little bit because the offense looks so great. And the game was won in a fashion that for the Houston Texans, they haven't seen in a while. But as you get to be a little more granular, I think you do have to say, no, there's still some areas where you can improve, still some areas of growth.
Mr. Wilcotts, we have a very good game coming up right now, and we'll get into an early preview of this Texans-Bengals matchup where this is the biggest game on the schedule, I would say, for the Houston Texans besides November 26th, maybe against the Jaguars. But in terms of a Bengals team that's been to the Super Bowl, been there, done that, They have accolades. And this is a statement game for the Houston Texans. And myself and Ruben both believe that we can beat the Bengals. I'm just not so sure if it's going to happen. What is the confidence level going into this game, and what are your thoughts about the Texans-Bengals matchup so far?
Oh, look, it's a week-to-week league. Even Joe Burrow said it. Hey, they were 1-0 this week. He said their goal now is to be 1-0 next week. And nobody knows that, I think, better than the Bengals, but at least among these teams that find themselves above 500 halfway through the season. They've gone through and weathered the storm of adversity after getting off to an 0-2 start. They have since won 5 of their last 6 games, including 4 in a row. They've gone on the road and beat teams like the San Francisco 49ers, hosted the Buffalo Bills in prime time, dueled it out with one of the league's best quarterbacks in Josh Allen. And Joe Burrow is healthy again. He's playing his best. The Bengals defense is playing their best. They've forced 2 turnovers, at least 2 takeaways in 4 straight games during the course of this 4-game win streak. So they're prone to take the ball away. The offense is clicking and starting to make a lot more plays. Joe Burrow's under center, which has helped the run game. And they've gotten their tight ends involved in the pass game. And more importantly, Joe Burrow is a consummate winner. This guy is an assassin. And that's the difference. As I survey the league, we got a lot of good quarterbacks in our league. The difference between the good ones and the great ones are the guys that are so laser focused. They come there to do one thing and one thing only. That is to beat you. And we've seen that from Joe Burrow. We've seen that from Patrick Mahomes. I've seen it from Lamar Jackson, to be honest with you. Tremendous competitor. Lamar Jackson's won roughly 75% of the games that he started since coming into the NFL. How many quarterbacks can say that? It's not that he wins them by himself, but with him on the field, that's the percentage of wins the Baltimore Ravens have, because that's the focus that the quarterback has. It's not about stats. It's about winning.
You mentioned Joe Burrow, and, some fans here, we are kind of comparing C.J. Stroud to Joe Burrow. Do you see kind of the same similarities between these two quarterbacks?
I think there's some. I think you can say, look, C.J. Stroud, this is like a homecoming for him. He's coming back. He went to school two hours away in Columbus at The Ohio State University. Everybody knows Joe Burrow went to that school as well. Now, Urban Meyer decided not to play him, and he sat for 3 years before he went to LSU and showed what he was made of. But if you look at, comparatively speaking, the number of games played throughout their college career, the number of big games that they played in their college careers at big Power 5 schools at the highest level against some of the best competition, I think there's a great comparison. I find it ironic that many of the pundits who are part of the draft industrial complex didn't give C.J. Stroud the credit he deserved for winning a lot of those games, but they gave Joe Burrow credit for winning a lot of those games in college. I think there is a lot. I think you can compare the experience and just winning, the sheer understanding of what's required to lift a big-time program. Because when you get drafted 1 or 2, you're going to a team that's not that good. You're going to a team that hasn't been winning, that doesn't have a great culture, and you have to build it. You can't expect someone else to do it for you, and that's what C.J. Stroud walked into. That was what Bryce Young walked into. That's what Joe Burrow is the first overall pick. That's what he walked into, and he quickly turned it around. So I do think there are some similarities, but I think, again, small sample size, there's still a lot of wait and see.
To get into some of the matchups here with the Texans and Bengals, and I know it's early, it's only Tuesday that we're talking about this, but what is the level of where is Jamar Chase at? Because some of the quotes from that game afterwards definitely felt like it like an implication he wasn't going to play on Sunday. Do you know exactly where he's at in terms of playing, whether or not he's questionable for Sunday?
I know this. I would never judge a player after a game and then start asking them, are they going to play next week? I played in this league. You can ask anyone who's played in this league. And they don't know how they're going to feel the next morning, which is the real test, because I can tell you most mornings after a game when players wake up, don't even talk to them about playing, because they can barely get out of bed. They can barely walk to use the restroom. Trust me when I tell you, that's how tough it is. That's how physical this league is. So it's way too early. It's just way too early. And look, if it's all about practicing, that to me, I think anytime you talk to an athlete, always ask them, can you practice? Because if you can't practice, you can't play. Mm-hmm. And there's been some scenarios where guys didn't practice and did play, but I can tell you right now, they didn't feel that comfortable going out there and playing without the ability to practice and to sharpen their tools. There's a reason why we practice in this game. And if you can't practice, then I think that's pretty much a sign that you won't be able to play. So I think that's really the first tale. And so we really are too early in that cycle to be able to provide answers.
I want to ask about the last 4 wins, because like you said, on a winning streak for the Cincinnati Bengals. I see here a dominant win just a couple of days ago against the Bills, a statement win against the 49ers. What has been the main difference? Because I see here in the first couple of weeks, it was 24 points allowed to the Browns, 27 allowed to the Ravens, 27 allowed to the Titans. But your past couple of weeks, the Cincinnati Bengals have barely been allowing 20 points.
Yeah, they've allowed an average of, I think, 17 points a game during this 4-game win streak. There are a lot of different scenarios. One is, remember, they lost their 2 safeties, and the safeties are almost like quarterbacks for a defense, particularly veteran guys like Von Bell and Jesse Bates. And then when you bring in new guys, they've got to learn to work together. They have to learn to communicate. It's a very young secondary on the back end. More importantly, Joe Burrow is such a force multiplier that when he was hurt and unable to really function at a high level, when your offense is going 3 and out, and the offense isn't producing, we all know that affects and impacts the defense. Your defense can wear down, particularly as you get late into ball games, late in the 3rd quarter and into the 4th quarter, because your offense isn't on the field. Now you're taking more snaps. It's hard to stop Derrick Henry for a full game. But if you said that Derrick Henry is and that offense is going to get maybe 3 more possessions than they normally would, most defensive coordinators say, okay, our work is cut out for us. It's going to be very difficult. And that's how offenses and defenses on good teams really work together. We call it complementary football. You may hear that term a lot, but that's what that really means. So as the offense has gotten better, the defense, their work has become more meaningful. They didn't have to carry the load. And listen, they played phenomenally on the road against San Francisco. They played great against Buffalo. But I think we saw at the end of the game when Joe Burrow, after the Bills scored a touchdown to make it, to get 18 points in that game, their offense, the Bills never got the ball back and the defense didn't have to go back out on the field because Joe Burrow and the offense kept the ball, whittled all the time off the clock, got out of there with a win. That's complementary football. So this defense has gotten better with more reps because the younger players have gotten better. Cam Taylor-Britt having a Pro Bowl season on the back end. The safeties are working better together, Dax Hill and Nick Scott. But the offense has been more productive. They've been more integrated in the success of the team. And so all of those things, I think, have played a role. And this is what Lou Anarumo's defenses do. They all get better as the season goes on.
When we're talking offenses, is there any similarities you've seen between Zach Taylor and if you know anything with the Bobby Slowick offense? Are there any similarities? Zach Taylor came from Sean McVay, who stemmed all the way to Mike Shanahan and the Washington Redskins. During that time, Bobby Slowick was on that staff as well as being in 2010 as a video guy. Are there any similarities to both offenses? And why does it just continue to work in the NFL?
Yeah, this goes back to people don't know this, but the grandfather of it all, Sean McVay's grandfather, is a guy that hired, one of the best coaches ever, in Bill Walsh, who had served as the offensive coordinator under Paul Brown here with the Bengals. And so they were running it here. The quote West Coast offense was being ran here with the likes of Kenny Anderson in the early days before Bill Walsh goes out to San Francisco, and the rest is history. He had a coach that he took with him by the name of Sam Weiss, who also brought it back here. And so there's a lot of history, and there's some similarities, but you can imagine from the granddad to the dad to the grandchildren, as you get down the pyramid, things become a little watered down. The nomenclature or the definition and glossary of what we call plays, how we define it, how we go about moving the ball down the field and getting it into the end zone, philosophies, it can all change, but it is all, to your point, rooted in some of the same systems. And that is, it's going to go through the quarterback. The ball's got to come out quickly. We're going to allow our skilled players to make plays after the catch. But after that, whether it's vertical stretch or horizontal stretch in the passing game, whether we build it off the run game and play action or RPO schemes, those things are more nuanced and a lot different today than it was in the beginning.
I wanted to ask you about number 85, T. Higgins. There's a lot of uncertainty about where he could potentially be next year. Do you have kind of a comment on that? I mean, what I mean by that is, like, what do you think is going to happen with T. Higgins? Do you expect him to be with the Cincinnati Bengals for the long run, or is this going to be potentially his final year with the Bengals?
Boy, you're talking about uncertainty there, because there's nobody in their right mind who would allow T. Higgins to walk out the door. Secondly, you wouldn't let him walk out the door without compensation. And the Bengals have A, they can offer him a new contract, right? B, they can franchise tag him. I think it's a real stretch to say he's not going to be with the Bengals next year. I do think that's a long stretch because he's such a good player. And look, Joe Burrow has a large say-so in the guys that he wants to keep around him. And he and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are very close. I understand all the teams who are coveting what Duke Tobin
that's why I asked.
built here. It's like everybody's looking at your girlfriend, man, if you got the right girl, by the way. But everybody's looking at your girl. You can look, but you can't touch. It's called tampering. And I'll quote Duke Tobin on this. He says, look, he's not in the habit of helping other people build their football teams.
Yeah, we've definitely been wanting to ask about it, T. Higgins. Texans Twitter has been going crazy about him. Moving forward, Texans Bengals. So Joe Mixon, definitely going to be a problem for this Texans defense. We lost Hassan Ridgeway for the rest of the year. That was someone that was a really good player for this team. We had problems with Rachaad White just this few days ago. The Texans defense has had a constant nagging issue with trying to stop the run. What kind of day are you looking at for Joe Mixon against the Houston Texans?
Joe Mixon is playing lights out. And I think while everything else offensively had been slumping, he wasn't. He's clearly having his best year as the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's not just always about the numbers. He is running better. He's breaking more tackles. He's creating more yards after contact. He's getting his feet up. His knees are high, and he's exploding through would-be tacklers. He's a big guy. He's an agile guy. I don't think, pound for pound, I don't think anyone is as big as he is, as athletic as he is the kind of receiver that he is. Yeah, Derrick Henry's a bigger cat who's got vertical speed, who can get down the field and score and hit home runs in the run game, but he's not the receiver that Joe is. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey is more agile as a catcher and as a receiver, but he's not the powerful runner that Joe is. Joe's a combination of all of those things. He really is, and understands the game, and a leader in this locker room, by the way. There's a reason why Orlando Brown Jr. signed with the Bengals and no other team, because he wanted to play with his Oklahoma Sooner and former teammate when he was in college, and that's Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's helped this team to recruit some really good players. So he's a leader. They know what work they have in store for them in terms of trying to get back to a Super Bowl, get back to the AFC Championship game. But they're just taking it one game at a time. They don't talk about it. They just show up for work, and they understand that it's a process. And that's what you like about this group of players with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, no, like Harley said, we feel like we could potentially win this game, but will they? It kind of feels like we are catching the Cincinnati Bengals at a wrong time. Their offense is firing on all cylinders. But if there's one thing that the Houston Texans defense could take advantage of us, Mr. Solomon, what would you say they need to do on Sunday to kind of give them a chance against the Cincinnati Bengals offense? He's going to say
I don't think they match up well at all. Listen, if you can't pressure Joe Burrow, it's going to be a long day, because I know there's no way you can cover their receivers and the running backs. And now that the tight ends have gotten involved, their three tight ends on Sunday night combined for 10 catches, 110 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. And that's Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample, as well as Irv Smith Jr. So, I mean, they throw a lot at you. I mean, it's really about pressuring the quarterback. The teams that have been successful have been able to get to Joe Burrow, but now that he's moving so well, he's like Houdini in that pocket. He doesn't run to run, he runs to throw. And it's made the entire offense just elevate. And so it's a tough offense to deal with. There's no doubt about it, particularly when they're all clicking the way that they have been.
There's a numerous amount of weapons on that Bengals offense. I am slowly getting less and less confident into this game the more I hear you talk about it. And me and Ruben were just talking about it in our last live stream. The tight ends all of a sudden come alive. And now you got, you still have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We're going to possibly be missing Derek Stingley again this week, which is just a huge loss for us in terms of the secondary. Jimmy Ward possibly doesn't play as well. The Texans, it's going to be a rough one, man. It's going to be tough, because if they play zone coverage, you can't do that. Joe Burrow eats up zone coverage. You play man coverage, you don't have the secondary to stay with these guys foot for foot, So overall, the Houston Texans, what is obviously it's an any given Sunday league. We lost to the Panthers, and we were riding high thinking we were going to beat the Panthers, the 0-6 team. What is the chances you're giving the Houston Texans to pull in the upset and getting the statement win over the Cincinnati Bengals?
I would have said that Derek Stingley is a huge factor, because he knows Jamar Chase very well. He knows Joe Burrow. They were teammates on that championship team, and they made a run in 2019. And that was Stingley's, I think it was his freshman year there. But I really do believe that you look at Nico Collins, Noah Brown. I love, Tank Dell. They've got talented receivers. I think Dalton Schultz has been a real good addition to this offense. And look, if they can get the time, and I think they can maybe test a young secondary. That's given up some plays. Now, they made a lot of plays. They will steal the ball from you. They're ball hawks. There's no doubt about it. But, they've given up some plays. And I think the Houston Texans, when it comes to their overall pass game, can stretch a defense. It really is about protection, because, hey, look, former Houston Texan DJ Reader, he's coming with bad intentions. He wants to remind
shout out to
who
DJ.
he is. I can just tell you, the guy has been phenomenal for the Cincinnati Bengals. BJ Hill, he's another guy that works inside, but then coming off the edge, Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson, It doesn't get any better in these guys, and they've got depth. They've got a rotation. So they're going to have to block these guys in order to make it a really good game. They can block them and hold up in protection, then I think we can find ourselves in a dogfight.
No, I mean, it's just one game we are all excited for. A potentially huge game for the Houston Texans. I think it's going to come down to the shoulders of CJ Stroud, just like it's been the entire season. Mr. Solomon, I wanted to ask you about Will Anderson Jr. There's been some criticism of him on not being able to get to the quarterback, even though leading the, one of the league leaders in pass rush win rate. Just got his second sack of the season a couple of days ago. What are your thoughts about Will Anderson Jr.? Is he going to be just fine, or should there be some concern?
Too early to tell. Mm-hmm. He will be fine because they're going to nurture him and help develop him. There's a lot of nuance to playing in this game. I will tell you this. There's no player that comes into this league. I don't care where you're drafted. I don't care who you are. There's no player comes into this league who doesn't have to be coached, who doesn't have to be taught, and doesn't have to be developed. You can't name me one that can just walk out there on his own and think he's going to make it happen against a bunch of grown men who've been doing this for a minute. I'm not saying rookies can't be successful, but you could see even Chase Young, who was Defensive Rookie of the Year when he came in and has not been the same since. I've seen players have that spark early and fade late. I've seen players get off to the slow start because it's based on what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to do a lot of different things. And so there can be a ramp up to success. And I think you just have to be patient and play the long game with players that you know they can play. So you just play the long game, and it's way too early to even have any doubts about Will Anderson Jr.
Solomon, as we wrap this up, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you saying there's no chance for the Houston Texans to beat the Bengals?
No, I don't think you heard me say that at all. No, I don't think those words even came. In fact, I think I heard you just say it. So, you might want to be careful because your audience is listening. They know I didn't say it. They did hear you say it in the form of a question, but it was your words, not mine. They know what they're up against. The Bengals are a really formidable team, but the Bengals are humble. They know that the Houston Texans are one of those teams that they would love to beat a team like the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals know that they're going to get their best shot. What that is, we don't know. But they know that they get everybody's best shot. They're used to that. And that's what makes playing in the National Football League a lot of fun. This is a week-to-week league, and you can't overlook anyone. Most of these games come down to the fourth quarter. And as you know, last week, it came down to the final drive. Comes down to the final possession. Even for the Bengals against the Bills, regardless of the score, comes down to that last possession. And you got not only to be talented, you got to be smart. You got to be really smart. And that's why the best teams end up winning, because the best teams are the smartest teams as well.
We like to have fun on this podcast. I love joking around with my guests. You are the first guest in November, so I have to ask you, man. Thanksgiving soon, man. What's your favorite dish in Thanksgiving?
My favorite Thanksgiving dish is my mother's oyster dressing. Phenomenal. Trust me. And you got to know, my mother's from Louisiana. She's from Shreveport, Louisiana. Trust me. They know what they're doing down there. So she definitely can throw down.
Okay.
Once again, guys, thank you everyone for being a part of today's episode. We were joined by Mr. Solomon Wilcotts. This was so much fun. We learned a lot. Thank you a lot, Mr. Wilcotts. And guys, thank you for being a part of today's episode. You guys have a very blessed day. Go Houston. Go Houston Texans.